All right, so back to this 86 FJ60. So last night I had a few minutes and I went ahead and roped this windshield in. And we didn't get it on video, but I'll do the back window here shortly. I wanted to go over a little bit on this windshield. So I don't know where this customer sourced this windshield from. They brought it to us. Typically, we like to source the parts because I know what I'm getting, and if I have an issue with it, I can send it back and get another one. But the radius on this windshield wasn't round enough. So what I mean by that is when this windshield set down in the hole, the center points of the windshield made contact to the body, but the sides of the windshield were actually raised about ½ an inch off the body. So it wasn't round enough to sit into the frame of the windshield frame quite well enough. So, and it was tight. It was hard to get in. This was the first one I've had in probably 6 years that took me more than 2 attempts to get in. I ended up having to put cups on it and then run a ratchet strap around through the inside of the car and put tension on it so I could hold everything in place while we worked this real stiff and hard gasket here. This thing is, man, it's a stiff gasket. So now typically, rule of thumb here, I talked about this a little bit in the Chevelle video. Modern standards is to apply a little bead of adhesive to the inside of this gasket before you rope it in. But however, I don't know anything about the paint on this thing, and this glass fits so tight in here. If I'd have tried to put adhesive on it first and tried to gasket this thing in, I'd have had a mess absolutely everywhere. So we're not going to do it on this one. I mean, sometimes you got to make exceptions to the rule, and this is one of them you got to make exceptions to, because if I get adhesive on on the surface of this paint and I'm trying to clean it up and I don't know the quality of the paint on this thing, if I use a chemical or something that starts to break down this paint, then we're going to be in a whole mess. So I'm going to go back and back bead this thing with a tube of butyl. We'll get a little bit of a video of that so we can make sure that gasket, I'm sure this thing will not leak like it sits with the gasket, but we're going to back bead it with butyl around the top 3 edges just to make sure they're not going to have any issues. So we'll take it on around to the back. I want to be able to get some pressure on this thing. So I think I'm going to sit in this thing while I do it. Maybe it'll work up here all right. If not, I'll close it down and get on the inside, and so I can really get some leverage on it. Well, use my head as a prying force here. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get the job done. Now, I make this look easy. I promise I make it look easy. But the whole reason this thing is here is because somebody else couldn't get it in. So, you could try this, but just be prepared to feel like a dummy while you do it. When I first got into this, I felt like a dummy trying to do it. So, can be quite tough. Couple. So I'll get it in like that. Kind of work the gasket. You can see there's some spots where the edges of the gasket rolls down against the pinch well. What I'll do is I'll take a little bone tool and find me a gap somewhere and run around it and fish it back out, just like that. And you kind of work your gasket at the same time. It always makes everybody nervous to see me smack on it like that, but these old gasket sets, sometimes you got to do it. One thing I thought about, that windshield up there, when the gasket come to us, whoever tried to do it before, they had it all super lubed up. It was super slick with some kind of lube. And on some vehicles, it helps to lube these gaskets to get it to go in better. However, if you get one that's super tight or the gasket super stiff, where these edges want to roll up in the corners here, and you can't keep it rolled out while you're trying to put it in, if the gasket is too slick and these corners are rolled, the corners will roll and it causes pressure on the gasket and it makes it harder to pull down into the pinch well. So If there's lube on the gasket and you start trying to rope it in, because the gasket's so slick, with that outward pressure from the outside of this gasket being on it, it'll just pop out as soon as you start to get it in. You want that gasket to be dry and sticky so that as you start to get it pulled down tight into the hole, you don't lose any of your progress. If you start to lose some of that progress, you just got to pull it back out, do your rope again, start all over, and you'll just fight it and fight it and fight it. It's best keep the gasket good and dry on something that fits real tight like that. And then, so that way as you're going, your slack, any slack that you got stays taken up as you go in. So, all right, so I'm gonna go ahead and bed this thing in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bed in 3/4 of it, which means from this corner all the way around to the other far corner. But don't do it across the bottom. And the reason is because there's drain holes at the bottom edge of the windshield here. So if any water gets in up here and runs down, or water collects at the bottom, it's got to have somewhere to go, or it'll hold it. It'll cause long-term corrosion or start to leak into the car or anything like that. So we never bed in the bottom. I bed in 3/4 of it. Now, a lot of this is feel, just knowing how much to get in. Try to keep tip of your adhesive clean while you're getting started, like as you're going here, and it just makes it so much easier for cleanup. So, and this butyl is real pliable when it goes in, and it never completely hardens. It becomes, I guess, stiffer once it gets in there and it's set. So after a few hours, it'll become much more rigid than what it is now, where it's like, and it's just super stringy. So there's a couple different ways to do this as far as the cleanup process goes when you're getting the butyl into the gap there. You could tape it off and then hit it with a little glass cleaner and then kind of pull the tape and form yourself a line. I find it to be a little easier to just hit it with glass cleaner and just clean up the butyl that's there rather than pulling a tape line. You know, it's more than one way to do it, but just put a little pressure on that gasket to squeeze out any excess. So when you put the glass cleaner on there, it keeps the butyl from re-sticking to anything because the surface is wet. Do the other side. So, and you'll kind of wind up with little tiny clumps along the edge. Just kind of take your fingernail and roll those out. Good to go. All right, that's that. So we're gonna do the same thing on the back glass. We showed you how to do it up here. There's no sense in showing you back there. But that's how it's done on a lot of these old classic cars. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.